Now, moving to the Abbot Point approval, in the public environment report for that project, there were options canvassed about land-based disposal of dredge spoil. They were dismissed as not financially viable. Was there any independent analysis done of those claims about the viability of dumping anywhere other than in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park area, in the World Heritage area?
Senator, when we took a look at this proposal, I think there's a couple things that I just want to start off with that I think are very, very important context. The expansion of Abbot Point as a proposal is an expansion of an existing port, and because of that, we think it's also consistent with the World Heritage Convention recommendations, as well as consistent with their recommendations to us. We've ensured that there was a world's best practice environmental assessment undertaken for this port. That being said, as context, the proponent did undertake a multivariable analysis of a range of options, which obviously led them to conclude that their preferred option was for the site disposal location, which was approved, and that methodology associated with that undertaking. And further, the piece that I would also highlight here is that in undertaking that analysis, the proponent was required to ensure that there was an adequate scientific rigor behind each of those elements in developing their recommendation to the department.
And my question was there any independent analysis of those claims by the department of the proponent's claims?
With any environmental assessment, Senator, we would be taking a look at the veracity of any analysis provided by a proponent to ensure that there is a high level of confidence that not only environmental impacts but also the proposed avoidance mitigation and offset measures would be adequate to yield a acceptable outcome as required under the Act.
So was there a cost-benefit analysis done of the various dumping options, not just the onshore, not just the offshore ones, but the onshore ones? And not the coastal ones, obviously, but the inland ones?
Right. As I mentioned, the proponent undertook a multivariate analysis, and I would ask my colleague, Mr. Murphy, he can go into more detail about what that consisted of.
Sure. Look, I'm more interested in the department's response to that and whether you assess those claims with, your own cost-benefit analysis or simply tick and flick, if you pardon that.
No, the department did not undertake costing analysis of the individual proposals. The proponent was in a position where they had undertaken costing estimates for, as you would expect, for a commercial corporation of the various options, but the department did not undertake any costings of those options.
Okay. Okay, look, also on that point, I canvassed with Gabrumpa in the previous estimate session that they had done some research about offshore dumping of dredge spoil and how far that spoil travels, and of course the damage that it can then do in the marine environment. The Gabrumpa at the time pointed out that they, in their modelling, had added some additional parameters to make the modelling more accurate. And they pointed out that North Queensland Bulk Ports, the applicant for the dumping at Abbot Point, had not included those additional modelling parameters in their own original modelling in the public environment report. I asked Gabrumpa whether the company would be required to go back and redo that modelling properly and add in these new parameters, and Gabrumpa directed me to you guys. So I'm now following that up, given that the approval's now been given. Was North Queensland Bulk Ports required to redo that modelling and factor in those additional parameters so that you could get a proper handle on where the dredge spoil would end up?
There's two pieces that I'd like to respond to that, Senator. First of all, in formulating our advice to the Minister, we did seek the views of the Marine Park Authority on the proposed decision and also condition set. And one of their comments was absolutely around the idea of the importance of monitoring, as you're talking about. However, they recommended no changes to the content of our recommendations. And I think that's because when you take a look at condition number 14 in the approval documentation, it talks about the ecosystem research and monitoring program and lays out in great detail the methodology for hydrodynamic modeling that will be required, the stochastic dredge plume modeling that will have to be undertaken, including the number of years that will have to be incorporated into that modeling. And it goes on at some length in terms of specifying exactly what modeling would be considered adequate to be able to undertake this project with a good understanding of both the impacts and also the long-term effects.
Okay, so you asked them to do some proper modelling after the approval was given?
No, it's actually, it's
I don't
part,
understand
sorry,
that.
Senator. The specific condition requires that the proponent needs to provide an Abbot Point ecosystem research and monitoring program prior to the commencement of the dredging and disposal activities. There's a number of other requirements in the proposal or in the decision which require the proponent to complete and have ministerial approval of management plans prior to the commencement of the action.
Okay, the approval was given.
Absolutely, as is consistent with our decisions
with your
on a
trend
number
of
of
conditional
projects.
approvals, indeed, that we continue to think is quite premature. But I'll move on. Still on the reef, but on the strategic assessment, there were some reports about submissions made by various industry sectors, including the Queensland Resources Corporation or Council or whatever they are, QRC. And the report was that QRC, in its submission on the terrestrial Great Barrier Reef strategic assessment, had asked for weaker laws, effectively. I mean, it was a media report, so they didn't go into legal detail of precisely what was asked. My question is, can you now table a copy of QRC's submission, and can you table all of the submissions?
Carolyn Cameron, Assistant Secretary of the Great Barrier Reef Task Force. The submissions were undertaken through both Garumpa and Queensland working together in a kind of collective have your say site. So the submissions were put into this collective mechanism. They didn't have a statement on there about confidentiality, so we can't release, and it's not ours to release anyhow, it's the Queensland Government and Garumpa's against their proposals for the draft strategic assessments. A number of organisations like QRC and others have put up their submissions onto their website, letting the community see what they've said. I don't know whether QRC has done so, but a number of organisations have, like ACIUCN and others, are making them available.
Will the Commonwealth write to all of the folk who made a submission and ask their permission to upload those documents so that the public can see those?
There's a second, and we may. We haven't made that decision yet, Senator. But there's the Queensland and Garumpa have to give us a report on public consultation. They have to indicate how all the different submissions have been dealt with. They have to identify not specifically what was said, but have the trends and the concepts tracked through public comments into the documents. And we'll have a view of that. That definitely will be up on, made public.
Okay, good. Have you briefed the Minister on any reforms to weaken reef protection laws as a result of those submissions, particularly the QRC submission?
Senator, you're asking us to disclose policy advice that's being given to the Minister that we haven't yet given. So in terms of responding to that question, it's not a question that we can respond to.
Okay, I was simply asking if you had briefed the Minister on the content of any of those submissions, and you say no, not yet?
As Ms Cameron's indicated, we're in the process, or the organisations who are doing the strategic assessments are in the process of pulling together the summary and synthesis of the public comments that were received on both of the strategic assessments, and they will be provided to the Minister with the final strategic assessment documentation when that's ready.
And hearkening back to an earlier response, Dr Drips, you said that wouldn't be until the second or third quarter of the year. Is that right?
That's right, Senator.
Okay, so we won't get the public submissions for another 6 months, if at all.
That is
that
not
right?
what I said, Senator.
No,
what
I
I
think
said
that's
is
what Ms Cameron said.
the strategic assessment reports would be provided to the Minister when they're ready, which is expected to be in the second or third quarter of this calendar year. So 6 months is a little bit of an exaggeration.
So, sorry, I'm now confused. When might we see those submissions? When might they be made public?
Between now and in 6 months' time, Senator.
Okay, so that's 6 months again. Great. We will all wait for those. Can I move now to the